this is my legacy. In honor of World Mental Health Day, this week's bonus drop revisits our powerful conversation with New York Times bestselling author and podcast host, Jay Shetty. Together with his incredible wife, Radhi Devlukia, they open up about resilience, healing, and finding calm in a disconnected world. Let's jump in.
Jay, you've interviewed some of the most remarkable people in the world and gained their insight and wisdom on issues about happiness and living a fulfilled life. I'd like to ask you if there's one or two things from one of your guests or multiple guests that have really impacted your thinking in those areas.
When I think about my guests, I definitely think about a lot of the incredible experts we've had on sleep. And the reason I bring up sleep is because I think it's the one habit that incredibly impacts every other habit. When you get a good night's sleep, you're less likely to eat foods that are bad for you. Mm-hmm. You're more likely to have the energy to work out. You're going to feel more motivated and focused at work. It's the domino effect. And what I've learned about sleep is that a lot of us are not trying to build up our sleep like we build up other parts of our life. We want to gain mastery at our careers. We want to get good at our relationships. But so much of that is based on the quality of our sleep. If you have slept well, you're less irritable, you're less agitated, you're less likely to get angry or frustrated when something doesn't go your way because you have that foundational calm. And so for me, the things I've learned about sleep, the first is set a bedtime routine. Try and sleep at the same time every single day. Mm-hmm. Again, at least 5 days a week. Second is try and sleep in what's known as cave-like darkness. A lot of us today have flashing lights from TVs, from remote controls, from our phones, whatever it may be. Try and sleep in cave-like darkness as best as you can. Try and sleep in a temperature that's 63 to 68, 69 Fahrenheit. That's the recommended temperature. Slightly cooler. We actually sleep better when it's a little bit cooler than what we think. And the last one is have a bedtime routine. You know, eat a few hours before you get before you're going to go to bed. Stop looking at your phone an hour before bed. Really create that energy to be able to switch off. And so sleep has been something I've focused on with a lot of my amazing guests, and the fulfillment and sleep can give so much fulfillment and peace in life. I think it would change so much of our day. And the other one I'd say that has really moved me is a lot of the advice that I've received on people talking about childhood trauma and the need to revisit our inner child. Mm. I think what we don't realize is so much of what we see today is not someone's adult self, but their child self stuck in their adult body. Mm. And so when you're looking at someone, if you were to look at them as a child, you could actually understand why they say the things they do, mm-hmm. and why they demand the things they want, and why they behave the way they do, and why they act the way they do, because it's their child self. And I think if all of us were able to look at not just other people that way, but look at ourselves that way, and look at our child self and say, where have I not fulfilled my childhood dreams? Where have I not met my inner child? Where have I not really reconciled with that inner child? I think life would change incredibly. I think the way we talk to ourselves, I think if we talk to ourselves as if we were talking to a younger child, we would transform the hate and the harshness and the pain that we inflict on ourselves just through the self-criticism and the self-judgment and the self-harsh talk that we have in our mind constantly from the moment we wake up and we look in the mirror and comment on our weight, to the moment we go to work and comment on our intellect, and the moment we get home and comment on our effort and enthusiasm. We're constantly criticizing ourselves. And so I think the need to see each other as children, see ourselves as children, makes such a big difference and would hugely transform the planet we live on. And there's a beautiful quote by Russell Barkley that I love, where he said that the people who need the most love often ask for it in the most unloving ways. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we are. The child self in us, we're not asking for love in adult ways. We're asking for love in childlike ways. And if we can heal that and recognize that in ourselves and the people around us, then we have the opportunity to truly have maturity, which is what I think we're all so deeply looking for and seeking.
from my experience, it's often the struggles that define who we are. Many times we know the glory, but we don't necessarily know the story of the individual. So, Jay, can you share or take us back to one of the toughest moments in your journey and what ultimately it taught you?
It's so interesting, isn't it, when you're asked to think about a tough moment in your life, you almost just see it as your life. And so you don't, I don't know, I never grew up. I only recognized when I got older and I spoke to people about experiences I went through that they were tough, because up until that point, they were just my life and they just felt normal. And you kind of assume everyone's going through those things. And so I think we all walk around thinking that everyone should understand us because they went through the same thing. And the truth is we don't understand each other because we went through very different things. And until you meet someone who's gone through something that you can connect with or resonate with, it's really hard to reconcile it. I think for me, a big part of it was that I grew up in a home that I mediated my parents' marriage. And I would say that that was the most challenging thing growing up, because I didn't wake up to a great environment. And I think for me, that made me who I am today. And so I have a lot of gratitude for that and appreciation for that. But I think a lot of people see me and the work I do today, and they often see the marriage I have with my wife today and our connection and relationship. And it comes from just having a long list of what not to do. And so I think often in life, you could get an amazing experience. And when you get that, you should write down everything you should do. And sometimes you're going to get a really painful experience. And in that, you should write down everything you should never do. And so partly what I'm grateful to have today is a list of what not to do in a relationship. And I'm very grateful that I got those lessons and those messages, because they allowed me to really be conscious about who I wanted to be, what I wanted to build, how I wanted to grow. And so that was very, very early on in my life. And I really believe that today, the reason why I have the ability to listen to people and their pain, and why I feel empathetic and compassionate to pretty much all experiences, is because I remember doing that for my parents.
Well, Jay, we're so inspired by that context of how you've become such an incredible voice. Radhi, I wanted to ask you a question. You've dedicated so much of your life to helping others heal. What's a moment in your life where you've had to heal yourself?
That's a good question. I feel like I'm healing on a daily basis, but I'd say a place where I felt I needed the most amount of growth and noticed the most amount of growth was when me and Jay first got married. We moved to New York, and it was the first time I'd really moved away from family, moved away from home, moved to a place where I pretty much knew nobody, and we were starting from scratch. And I grew up as the youngest child, where most things were done for me. Whether it was like me doing my homework late, my sister would stay up late and help me. Whether any decision I would make, my mum would help me make it. I really wasn't used to doing things for myself or by myself. And so when we moved to New York, I also had been studying for a long time, only to move with Jay to have a spouse visa where I couldn't work. And so I found myself in a weird position of just feeling lost and having to get to know myself in ways that I never had before. I was able to hide behind the work I did, or my family, or the community I was part of. And all of that was kind of stripped away from me, to only come to realize I absolutely did not know myself at all. I didn't know how to choose colors of things that I liked. I didn't know how to make decisions for myself. I didn't know whether I wanted something or didn't. And so it became this journey of just starting to learn about who I actually was. Like I grew up just thinking I wanted what my family wanted, or I liked what my sister liked, because I didn't spend the time to really get to know what my wants or needs were. And so I spent a lot of my time in New York walking around, crying down the streets, which seemed really normal in New York. No one seemed to care. And then having to do some seriously deep work of figuring out what is it that I like and dislike and want in my life. And And so I'd say that took a lot of healing, because I had to also unlearn things that I had, I thought that I knew about myself based on other people. And I had to realize that those were all views from others and perceptions of others that I had to step away from, because maybe I didn't want that narrative of myself and I wanted to create a new one. So yeah, I'd say that was probably the time I've had to heal the most.
Like, follow, and subscribe to the My Legacy podcast, and most importantly, share this with someone who needs a reminder of their strength today.
We obviously have laughed a lot today together, and that's wonderful, and it's so important. We have to be very transparent that right now it's very difficult for so many people. And so many people feel such an overwhelming fear, disconnection. And so I would really am curious to hear from both of you. What would you offer to people that are feeling that fear, that disconnection, the overwhelm, the stress?
Question. Do you want to go? The first thing that came to mind for me is whenever I feel like things are out of my control, or I feel like overwhelmed at what's happening around me, or even in our own life, there's this, every time I feel like it's just me, the problem feels really difficult to handle. But as soon as I think the problem is me plus God, or me plus the universe, or something that has a much higher power than I do, it starts to feel a little bit more manageable. And so I find that prayer for me has always been such a beautiful place to come to when all other hope feels lost. I think I get a lot of solace in prayer. And I think that also connects to the idea that we can feel way more disconnected when we don't feel connected to ourselves. And so whether it's practices and rituals to actually connect deeper to ourselves, that allows us to connect deeper to other people and have meaningful connections with others that help us through those times. I think reconnecting every single day in some way to who you are and having those moments are really important to be able to connect to someone else, to be able to feel understood or valued by other people. And yeah, I think for me, the main one always ends up being prayer, because I'm like, at this point, I can't control anything, so I'm leaving it up to you. But yeah, I would love to hear some of yours.
There's something called the third space theory. And it's this idea that just around 25, 50 years ago, we had three spaces we lived in. We had home, we had work, and then we had church or temple, synagogue, mosque. And what happened is that those three spaces shrunk to two spaces. We went from work to home and home to work. And now we all know that those two places have shrunk into one place.
Yeah.
We work from home and we live at home. And what's happened is not that we've just lost three spaces, but we've lost what that third space provided us. So what happened at church or the community center or a place of gathering was you had a space to look back on work and home and state and everything else and reflect on, how could I be better? What could I do differently? Let's figure out together what the solution is. What can we all band to do together? So the biggest challenge today is that we're all feeling the same feeling, but we're feeling it on our own. We're lonely, feeling the same thing. And there's a big difference between being lonely, feeling something, and feeling belonging in feeling something. Right. And so what I would encourage everyone to do is go and find your third space. Go and find your space of belonging. Go and find your space of connection. Go and find that space where you're with people of equal value, where you can share your heart, when you can hear other people's, when you can open up your mind, where you can carry someone else's burden. I think we've just lost that as a society. And I think these moments are great reminders that we are stronger when we are working together. We are better when we're working together. And ultimately, when we're united and carrying each other's weight, the weight doesn't feel as large. And I think that's the biggest challenge today, is that we're all carrying the weight on our own. And so finding that third space creating that third space if you don't have it. The third space doesn't have to be 200 people, 2,000 people, 20,000 people. It could literally be 4 people in a room that are reading scripture together, that are starting a book club, that are listening to this podcast and sharing what they learned from you and all your amazing guests that you've had on. It starts that small, and I really feel that we have to create that third space, even because right now our third space is all of us sitting in front of the television, and the TV screen is the third space, the phone screen is the third space, and that third space isn't giving you what the original third space gave you.
Jay and Radhi, thank you for sharing your wisdom, your love with each other in that beautiful, authentic way. The extraordinary challenges that you've laid in front of us of how we can all, our listeners and our viewers, do small but deeply intentional things every day in our lives.
Thank you for joining us. New episodes drop every Tuesday with bonus content every Thursday. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss a moment.